Join me as we talk all things true crime.
Made contact and shattered.
The missing 4-year-old. The parents have called in and advised that the mother has went through a wall, came home, now they can't find her.
Turn it over to another agency.
Chad, where are Lori's kids? They've been missing for 4 months. You have nothing to say?
4 were stabbed multiple times and were likely asleep during the attack. Some had defensive wounds.
Most of them had just like one that was the lethal stab wound.
Oh, what a tangled web we weave. Once I told a lie, and I told my family, I had to keep lying.
What's your, is it deemed?
We haven't cleared anybody.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It's good to see everybody in chat. Hello, Johnny's handing out some tea to get us started. Let me know if you guys can hear me. Thank you, everyone, for the birthday wishes. Yeah, like I said last night live, we'd be going live on Thursday like we normally do. And then I remembered like, oh yeah, it's my birthday this week. I think I'm going to just take Thursday off and go live tonight. So I spent the day and last night kind of going over Chris and Katie's interviews. And I just think that I want to kind of point out some things that I believe kind of are odd statements. By the way, hit that like button. It's not for me. It's to get the story out there. Sebastian is still missing. We are on day 45. If you hit that like button, it pushes this story out into the algorithm. So if you could just do it for Sebastian, that'd be great. I know somebody said in our the end of the live stream the other night, like, I hate when creators tell us to hit like when it just starts. How do I know I'm going to like the stream? Like, okay, that's fine. But this is for a missing child. So let's get his face out there. Let's get his name out there and just hit that like button. It's not for me. All right. So before I share the clips that I had put together, just like they do in other segments, Court TV kind of does their own background like a minute before they start their show. So for those who don't really know the case, I'm just going to play this and then we'll switch up to the clips that I've edited. All right. So thank you guys so much for being here.
Inside this beautiful neighborhood in Hendersonville, Tennessee, there is an unsolved mystery. It was a Sunday night going into a Monday morning, and 15-year-old Sebastian Rogers was supposed to be inside his home sleeping. His mother, Katie Proudfoot, says he went to bed at 9, but was making some noise around 10, including a thud sound. Katie told him to go to sleep. She went to bed around midnight. Then at 6 a.m., Katie woke up. She went to his room to get him ready for school, but Sebastian was gone. She searched the house and he was nowhere to be found. Sebastian's stepfather, Chris Proudfoot, was not home, and Sebastian's father, Seth Rogers, was at work about 45 minutes away. Police responded and began trying to figure out what happened. That was back on February 26th. And now, more than a month later, no sign of Sebastian, no sign of foul play, and no answers about what happened. Tonight, we'll take a look at some of the strange facts surrounding this case, like the lights in the neighborhood at 3 a.m. We'll also take a closer look at Sebastian and how his medical conditions and mental health could have played a role. And we'll focus on the water searches as we continue our investigation into the mysterious disappearance of Sebastian Rogers.
All right, so we will get back to that. That was last night's segment on Court TV. We won't watch the whole thing, but there were some good things in there that I want to share with you guys and expert opinions. So again, thanks everyone for being here. Hello, Roxanne, and everyone else who's wishing me happy birthday. Thank you so much. So, all right, I want to just share that and make it clear that these statements and everything, as you guys know, is just my opinion. I went through some interviews and I just found some things that I have a certain, feeling about. And that's where I come to bring it to you guys and share with you guys. So, you know, again, we don't know what happened. They are stating no signs of foul play. That doesn't mean people are cleared. That doesn't mean possibilities of foul play are off the table. It just simply means there's no evidence that they can point and say, like, yes, this is suspicious. This looks like a crime. Let's call this a criminal investigation. They have not done that. They were calling it an investigation, obviously, and they're going over some grounds that they've already looked at, and they're just retracing their steps and keeping the search going, although they had scaled back as well. So what I've done is gone through the Nancy Grace interview. I only went through, a portion of it, and I decided to just pull out, I think this is like 9 minutes altogether. I've kind of separated it in segments. So this first part is just stuff that I find, like, their responses I find interesting. And then I can elaborate on why I think it's interesting. And then it'll go into a segment that sort of points out Chris's body language that kind of switched up. So when you watch their interview, and I know a lot of people have, he's very stiff. Even Katie, actually, let me just kind of share. Oh, I don't think I have it up. Either way, you guys have kind of seen their interviews, and you see that, he just sits there with his hands at his side. There are certain questions that are asked where, he would kind of scratch his face or crack his neck or just do something that was sort of like out of his normal sitting there for this whole hour-long interview where he's just answering questions. And thank you so much, everyone. Everyone keeps coming in with the birthday stuff, and I just really appreciate it. And hello, Tony, and everyone else who's joined. So let's just get into it. Again, these are just my thoughts and opinions. We don't know exactly what happened, and everyone is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. So, and I stand by, everyone has a gut instinct. So these are just my gut instincts and feelings, like something feels off, odd statements, pretty much.
I was in Memphis, Tennessee.
How far away is that?
3 hours and 37 minutes from doorstep to doorstep.
Okay. 3 hours and 37 minutes from doorstep to doorstep. Now, the reason why I clipped this is because last night and, in live chats previous to last night, we've kind of thrown around the theory that their 3-hour phone call was a staged phone call, basically meaning you call somebody, you leave your phone at home, they leave their phone where they're supposed to be, and you actually go out and you're moving around outside of where your phone is. So what do you know? He is 3 hours and 37 minutes away, and their phone call lasted 3 hours. So to me, it's just interesting because could that mean that, that's enough time to drive, meet up, do what they had to do, and then, they get back home in the 3-hour mark and they hang up their phones? I just think that whole 3 hours, and then the way he describes it, from doorstep to doorstep, it's like he had mapped it out. Of course, when you are traveling and you're using like Google Maps or whatever, it really does give you the mapped out version with minutes like that. So is that why, or does it have something to do with that 3-hour phone call? So I'm just going to play that again.
How far away is that?
3 hours and 37 minutes from doorstep to doorstep.
All right. So you guys let me know. Yeah, Tony says very precise. again, we don't know if that's the deal. We don't know if that phone call is staged. Like we said last night, there would be a good indication that maybe it was if they could check their records. Do they talk on the phone that much when he's out of town? Other times, a pattern would be shown. Somebody asked in my comment section, could there be a way to prove that that was a staged phone call? And I thought about it. And if for some reason they're able to pull their black boxes out of their vehicles, and the black boxes show, you know, the engine fired up and they were traveling at 65 miles an hour at this time and all that time, and it's during the time of this phone call, like, yes, that, in my opinion, would be absolutely a way to prove that, like, okay, so how were you at your house with your phone on for 3 hours, but here on your black box in your car, it's showing that you were traveling and this is your rate of speed, et cetera, et cetera. Also, if for some reason they're able to, you know, track the black box and where they were going, where would there be cameras that kind of maybe have been able to pick them up? Again, this is just speculation. We don't know. But Kick says the doorstep to doorstep part is weird. He could have just said how long it was, but it could be normal. He knows because he just did the drive. Right. And it's like, do you just know doorstep to doorstep because you put this in Google Maps or whatever map app you use when you travel, and then that tells you exactly, you know, the time, and that's what's in your head. It definitely could be. Or it's like that private investigator that was on Court TV that we played a little bit of last night, who said sometimes when people add too many details, it's suspicious. So is it that or not? You know, like, we just don't know. And I think it's fair to kind of point out and say, like, that response was interesting. So that's why I've categorized it in the interesting response section.
Question regarding your vehicles. Ms. Proudfoot, what make and model do you drive?
I drive a Infinity SUV.
Okay, so these questions and her responses, this whole interview is not done in order of what Nancy Grace showed on her phone. I've specifically categorized them in areas that, you know, right now I think are interesting. The reason why I think Katie's response here is quote unquote interesting, because when you watch this interview and when you watch her other interviews, she does not hesitate to answer. There's never a point where she's like, can you repeat that? Or I'm sorry, what was that again? Or, she's not like that. She's very like fluid with her answers. There's even points where she'll say something and he says something at the same time, which I've included in this part too. I just feel like she got tripped up by Nancy asking about the vehicle. So why do I think that that might be something that kind of tripped her up? If she was driving her vehicle that night, could she not, like, okay, so your child is missing. You want the child's face, name, description of what they look like, what they were wearing. You want that information out there. If they're involved, or if you're involved in a crime and you're using your own vehicle for the crime, like, you don't really want the public to know your vehicle, right? Like, remember when Brian Koberger, before he got arrested, they were saying like, yeah, we're looking for this white type of car. It looks like this. And that's what people were really looking at. They're like, okay, who drives this Hyundai? Who drives this car? So for people who are involved in a crime, if they're using their vehicles, could that be something that she didn't really want out there? Because now not only are people going to be looking at their cameras and CCTV footage and stuff like that for her son, but now what if they decide, I think I saw a vehicle that looked like that around X time and this and that. So it just seemed like she was very hesitant to kind of give her description of her vehicle. If you watch the interview, and for those who have seen it, she never hesitates for an answer, except here. And hello, Linda. It's good to see you. And Zoe, everyone else who's joined. So again, this is just my opinion. This is just a pattern that I've seen in her interviews. She's very quick on her toes to answer yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and very, he was doing this and I was doing that. And then as soon as she's asked about her vehicle, she kind of is like hesitant. So then it comes to the vehicle, her work vehicle. And I wonder if too, she didn't want to give that description, like knowing that Nancy was asking about her car. Did she know that they were going to ask about the work vehicle also that was in the driveway? Was that work vehicle something that was used in a crime? Like, we just don't know. But in my opinion, her response was interesting. And this is the only time in the whole hour-long interview that she kind of is like, and doesn't answer right away. So let me just rewind it again and we'll play this whole answer out so you guys, I don't have to pause again.
Miss Proudfoot, what make and model do you drive?
I drive a Infinity SUV.
Year?
2017.
And sir, what do you drive?
I drive a diesel truck, Chevrolet.
Year?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it's a 2021, I think.
So there's only...
All right. So for anyone in chat, not just the men, but anyone in chat, do you guys know the year of your vehicle? Especially, I'm sorry, but guys who drive and love their trucks, they know the make and model, the year of their vehicles. From what I've seen in my 30-something years in life, they never are like, I can't remember the year of my car or my truck. I never see that. And he knew that she was going to ask the year because she had just asked Katie her year of her vehicle. So it seems like chat is pretty much saying like, yeah, like everyone, yeah, every man knows the year of their trucks. I agree, Allison. Vague AF, I know. It gets worse too because they want to talk about the work vehicle. Right. You know what kind of car you drive. Exactly. And that's just my opinion. And it seems like a lot of people are kind of on the same page as me. So why does it seem like both of them are very hesitant here to kind of give their make and model of their car? Do they not want the public to know that? Because then they could be looking at their surveillance like, oh, wait, I saw this car, on this path and it was at this time. And, so it's just interesting to me. Like, they obviously told police their make and model and year of their car, and the police know that. But once the public is made aware of things like that, it's kind of out there for the public to kind of help in the investigation and be like, I have a camera. Let me see if I notice anything, or they're seeming kind of weird. Let me see if I see their vehicle on my camera. It just was very much like they were not wanting to answer. Do you think they may have been thrown off by the third degree questions approach? Maybe. I mean, we can maybe chalk it up to that. I don't remember anything. I know the year of my vehicle. Right. I mean, how many times do you guys have to kind of deal with your insurance and stuff like that? Like and when you bring your car into the shop, like a mechanic asks you this question and you answer quicker to a mechanic over the phone when you're making an appointment than these two did. It's just weird. So now she's going to ask about the work vehicle that Katie has that's in the driveway. All of these questions are relevant because, what if something nefarious happened, if he's left the house, which vehicle would have been used for, or in? And then here's Chris's response when she wants the make and model of the work vehicle.
One car at the home, is that right?
There was actually a work vehicle in the driveway at the time as well, but it hasn't moved we can't give out that information because we don't have permission from her work.
I don't understand that. What?
About the make and model of the vehicle.
I have a work van that was also parked in the driveway.
Why is that? If it's out in the driveway where people can see it, why is that privileged information?
We just don't have permission from her company to divulge that information.
All right. So Nancy isn't even asking for her company's name. And did you notice she never even got a chance to say in the make and model of that vehicle? He had the answer already put out, letting her know in all one breath, there was a work vehicle, but we don't have the permission from her company to divulge that information. And Nancy, of course, is as confused as all of us. And like Angela said, it just sounds like BS. You know what? I know her face is funny. Like, what? I don't understand why it's in the driveway. Everyone can see it. We can literally drive by their house and see it. It's a white van. I'm not sure the make and model, but it's like a white van type thing. And, yeah, control freak to control Nancy. And it's like, but why? Why, does that work van have anything to do with the crime then? Why are we protecting the make and model of this van? We're not asking what company you work for or anything like that. It was just, to me, an interesting response. Very much not wanting to give information regarding their vehicles. And the whole question is, why? You would think if your son or daughter is missing, anything and everything, I would risk my job saying like, hey, we didn't give you that permission to put the make and model of our company car out there. Like you're fired. That to me, I would be fine with. I'd be like, listen, I'm just trying to get the information out there and get my story out there. You can fire me if you want. But here it's just very much controlled by Chris. And why don't they want something like that, shared? It's odd. All I can say is it's odd.
Have you asked?
No, ma'am, we have not. Nobody's.
So they haven't even asked the workplace, if it's something that they don't want them to divulge. So, and then Katie says later in this interview too, that she doesn't know when she's going back to work or if she is going back to work. So why is this why are we protecting the company that she's working for when she doesn't even know when she's going to return to work? And you didn't even bother to ask, if they could share that information. I just don't understand Chris, basically. I'm just confused by it. So that was a lie. Right. It's like he plays it off like we can't divulge that information. And yet you were never told that because you never asked. I wouldn't care what would happen if it helped me get my child back. Exactly. Yeah. What was the question that he was asked? And he said it was a HIPAA violation. Everyone's been joking around about it. And I can't remember what interview or question it was. And then there was also something that he was asked in that one Duchess interview. And he says, I'm not pervy to that information. So he says PERVY instead of privy. So everyone has been kind of been making fun of that response too. I'm not pervy to that information. What are you talking about? I don't understand.
Asked us
So that
question,
was okay.
Okay, so it did have to do with the work vehicle, and he said it's a HIPAA violation. Oh my gosh. Doesn't he know that everything can be fact checked, everything he's saying?
And that you guys have left the home. Is that true?
Yes, ma'am.
Why?
I'm going back to work.
I'm going back to work. And then, of course, she's very tight-lipped with this question. In fact, it took, oh my gosh, Linda, Freudian slip, pervy. After the stuff we found out about the essay, I'm not taking anything off the table. I'm really not. Troubling. But yeah, so she said, I heard you guys left the home, in which we've talked about this as well. That, if your child's missing and they both have stated, like, I believe he'll be found. I think he's still alive. So then why are you leaving his home base? There's other cases out there, and I'm sure chat will name them, where the victim has ran back home. In fact, I think that American Nightmare on Netflix is what happened. She came back home to her house after being kidnapped. They come back home, and that's where they go. Obviously, that's where they've been meaning to go the whole time that they've been gone, home, and she's gone. So I think that both of them sort of hesitate to answer Nancy's question here. Like, they're very much quicker to answer other questions in this whole interview. And yeah, it sounds more like they're making up excuses, not helping find their son, right?
Why?
I'm going back to work.
You're going back to work. What about you, Miss Proudfoot?
And I'm not going back to work. Not yet, at least.
Did you leave the home also?
Now, interesting. Katie is very smart. She was in the Navy, and Navy is one of the hardest to get into, and next to the Air Force. And I believe, in my opinion, she's playing dumb here. She doesn't want to answer why she left the home. And she's acting like she's misunderstanding Nancy's question. And she acts like she thinks that she's asking, when are you going back to work? Like, no, you know exactly what she's asking, because you didn't jump in to answer. Chris had to answer first. I'm going back to work. And you sat there coming up with time to find an answer, I think. And yet her best approach is to act like she thinks Nancy's asking her when she's going back to work. Like, I think she's playing dumb here, personally. And then, of course, Nancy calls her out, like, no, like, why did you leave the home? And thank you, Sherry, so much for the super sticker. I really appreciate that. Now, it's interesting too, because the body language of Chris, like I said, throughout this whole hour-long interview, they're just side by side, very stiff, very, they don't really show much emotion, let alone move. And he scratches his face with this question. Now, scratching your face obviously doesn't mean like you're lying or you're hiding something, but it is interesting that at this question is a time where he's got, this itch that he's got to scratch. Is it because he's uncomfortable with the question? I think so, personally. So let me just rewind again.
And I'm not going back to work. Not yet, at least.
Did you leave the home also, Miss Proudfoot?
Yes, ma'am.
Why?
To accompany my husband going back to work, and then I'm coming back.
Okay, when will you be back? Do you know yet?
No, not yet.
So you guys see what I'm saying? Allison sees, agreed, playing dumb so she doesn't have to answer the questions. Right. I mean, what mother leaves the home when their child is missing and she's being called out on it, and she's stunned. She doesn't know what to say. So she plays dumb and acts like she thinks that she's asking her when she's going back to work. Like, no, that's not what is being asked. It's not. All right. So Aries girl says, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but they just can't seem to stop acting so dang suspicious AF. I know. And that's why, we're on day 45. I've shared the flyer. I've shared his stories on my community page and Facebook groups. And I've kind of sat back and just watched things for a while. And then I'm like, you know what? No, like, I'm not going to go against my gut instincts. Everyone is kind of on the same page that something is off. I don't know which one or what exactly is going on here, but something's just off. Chris seems defensive and defiant with his head back, looking down his nose. Yeah, there's definitely times where you can tell he's very much annoyed. Yeah, to accompany him back to work. Right. I'm sorry. Was your husband the one that was missing and just returned and needs you to accompany him? Or is your helpless son, who's 15 years old, out there missing? It makes no sense. It just goes against, hello, Meligator. Honestly, it just goes against all the natural instincts and reaction from any mother or father who's missing their child. And that's just what I see it as. Like, this isn't quote unquote normal. If Proudfoots did not want scrutiny, they should have stayed away from social media. Right. And that's what's interesting too, is they went out on this podcast that Duchess won and were, speaking off camera like I am right now. And then as they go out on the media, their statements aren't even matching that first interview on that podcast. It's like, what is going on here? I think she knew something, and I still can't believe she left the house. She knew he wasn't coming back. A lot of people are thinking that. All right, moving on to the next little clips and segments. Watch Chris's body language. Now, again, I'm not saying that this means anything. I'm obviously not an expert, but I think it's interesting that at certain questions, he is kind of shifting in his seat or scratching his face. So take it for what you will.
What did you do until midnight?
I had been reading a chapter that I needed to, and I had been talking to my husband on the phone. I was falling asleep on him, so that's when he told me it was around midnight. He told me to go ahead and put the dogs up and go to bed. And that's what I did. I got up, put the dogs where they sleep, and then I myself went to bed.
Sebastian with a belt. What happened?
That was actually several years ago, and it
to
was
Mr. Proudfoot. To Mr. Proudfoot. To Mr. Proudfoot.
Yes,
Mr. Proudfoot, what happened?
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. I thought you were asking Katie. Sebastian had gotten in trouble. He got caught lying. And I had asked him, I said, hey, you got to have a punishment for this. He says, yes, sir. And I said, okay. So I gave him a swat with a belt on his buttocks, on the outside of his clothes, one swat.
After you've been talking to Mr. Proudfoot on the phone, you put the dogs away in a cage, a crate, inside the home, and you go to bed. Did you check on Sebastian at that time?
I did not.
Okay. Do you normally?
Not typically. Since he's gotten older, I've not been checking on him as frequently throughout the night because normally he's good to go in his room once he goes to bed.
Earlier, you had stated you heard a noise in his room before you went to bed. What time was that?
Around 10 o'clock.
10 p.m. What did it sound like?
Just a thud.
A thud. You stated that you said, look, I don't care what you're doing in there, go to bed. Is that right?
I was on the couch, which is...
No, she can't even just answer that question, yes or no.
Near his room, and I said, Bubba, did you fall out of the bed? And he said, no, ma'am. And I said, well, whatever you're doing in there, knock it off and go to sleep.
So you heard his voice at 10 p.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any idea what the sound actually was?
I do not know, because all of his shoes are accounted for inside the house still.
Are you positive?
I'm positive.
How do you know what clothes he was wearing?
The clothes that we described are the ones I saw him in when he went to bed.
That morning, you woke up at 6 o'clock. Is that the normal time you wake up?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you a heavy sleeper?
Off and on.
Do you take any medication at night that would make you sleep?
No, ma'am.
But you heard nothing?
I did not know.
So we know he is alive and well at 10 p.m. At 6 a.m. he's gone. You say he's never left before. Is that right?
Correct. He's never run off before.
And could I confirm, where was his bio dad at the time he went missing?
I believe he was at work in Nashville.
Had there been any family argument or altercation prior to him going missing?
No, ma'am.
All right. So again, those clips were supposed to show Chris displaying strange body language. I guess when I say strange body language, I should just say he moved out of his just stiff sitting there. And the questions that kind of got him to, either scratch his face or crack his neck or something like that were when Katie was asked, what did you do that night? The belt topic. Did you check on Sebastian? And where was bio dad? So all those questions, it seemed, in my opinion, made Chris uncomfortable a little bit, or shift in his seat, whatever you want to call it. Wait, if he needed time, Garmin, wouldn't she potty him midnight time? Right. If this whole diaper situation is an issue, wouldn't there be a time where you say, like, okay, let's empty your bladder before you lay in bed? Like, we don't want to have an accident at night. No, there's nothing mentioned like that. And yeah, who hits with a belt? It's not 1904. Not only that, but like, it's interesting how he gives like the whole, like, on top of his jeans. Right. Because people who use belts on kids use it on top of their clothing. I don't know. So this next part is those two answering questions at the same time. Not sure what that means or what it doesn't mean, but I found them interesting. So, and then we'll get back to her story changing after that.
I understand that the video of the two flashlights, and I'm saying that with air quotes, that's not exactly what that was at all. We now don't believe that two flashlights were observed around your home. Is that correct?
Yes.
You're very correct.
Chris, you're very correct. The emphasis to me means, no, actually, that's probably accurate. There were people with two flashlights outside the house. Like, why? You're very correct. We don't know what those lights were. And supposedly you two don't know what those lights were. So how are you so sure that those lights outside weren't flashlights? Even if a perpetrator or stranger abduction took place, why are you so sure that those weren't flashlights used or those weren't the suspects? Just him trying to, that's a convincing statement, right? Like, why are you trying to sell that? The diaper was for subservice, yeah, and domination, yeah. It seems like it too. Some sort of control factor, some sick thing with Chris. I think so too. Something along those lines. Yeah, they're lying their butts off. That's how I feel. All right, so I want to hear him say, you're very correct. How do you know that? Because supposedly you weren't there.
And I'm saying that with air quotes. That's not exactly what that was at all. We now don't believe that two flashlights were observed around your home. Is that correct?
Yes.
You're very correct.
Okay. And Mr. Prophet, when did you leave town?
Early February.
So you had been gone for days before he went missing. Is that correct?
Correct, ma'am.
So they answer at the same time to discredit the flashlight theory. They answer at the same time to signify that he was not in town and to make that clear.
Who called 911?
I did.
You did.
Yes,
What
ma'am.
time?
without looking at a call log, I can't give you the exact time, but on or about 6:20.
How do you not know when you called 911 for your stepson? To me, that's strange. So, and also, he gets home in the early afternoon. Why are they not calling until 6 something? All right, so now I kind of want to talk about the thud, because my friend Debbie and I were kind of discussing this in my moderator Johnny's chat last night, and we kind of have a theory that the thud that she heard was actually her own doing, possibly to her own son. And like we've stated, she's proficient in mixed martial arts. Not only with mixed martial arts under her belt, but when you're in the military, I mean, you're trained to kill. She's had all types of trainings. Again, this is just a theory, speculation, not saying it's 100% fact, but this noise, this thud that she heard, could it just be, what she had done to her own kid? Hi, Holly. Good to see you. Carol says, I think that too, the thud. I would not be surprised, Cray Cray says. Carol says, I thought the same thing. Or Keezy says to Carol that she thought the same thing. Yeah, they called the sheriff's office, not 911. Good point, Bubba. I forgot about that. So yeah, Nancy asks about 911. Why didn't they say, well, we called the sheriff's office because blah, blah, blah. Like he explains it in another interview, something about jurisdiction. I don't know. It sounded like bullshit to me. But yes, he doesn't correct Nancy and say like, well, we didn't call 911. We called the sheriff and blah, blah, blah. So again, lying by omission. I don't know. Jesse says it sounds accurate. I think she's reliving what happened. It's a possibility, I think she hurt him because her husband didn't want him and she wanted to travel with him so she can be with him. And that's the thing that's confusing too, is like Seth talks about how they had talked about him having custody. So if that was the case, sorry guys, I like swipe. If you guys have a Mac computer, like a laptop, if you swipe it a certain way, like it just takes you off the screen. I'm back. If that's the case too, Maligator, because I was like wondering that too, like was she just fed up with him? But if Seth is talking about how, hold on, I gotta pull this up, how he wanted to take custody, then like why would they go through this extent, right? Like I'm very confused by it, but sometimes things just don't make sense. Hold on, let me find this. It's temperamental. Okay. The thud. All right. I don't know. Just it's strange to me. No, it was just me, guys. I'm back. Yeah, Chris is the king of lying by omission. All right. Oh, thank you, Holly. It's your birthday tomorrow, love. I haven't been on the book much lately. Just checked in and got the notification you were live. Well, I'm glad you're here. The thought is the biggest question of all. And like, why wouldn't you go and check? And isn't it funny, and which we're going to get into with this whole little segment here, is like, not only does Nancy say like, so you said that, I don't care what you're doing in there, just go to bed. Is that correct? And she doesn't say yes or no. And then she like changes it up. And what's interesting about her changed up story? I yelled to him and I asked, did you fall out of the bed? And he said, yes, ma'am. And isn't it funny that just like he took the garbage out and what was the other thing that she said that was like a proof of life thing that I was talking about last night that we just don't know if it's true or not? Well, I guess a thud. But the fact that she kind of changes the story here and says that like they had a conversation back and forth, she's just trying to like emphasize a proof of life at that moment for him. They had a conversation and she says, you heard his voice. And she says, yes. And so Nancy goes into this whole like, okay, so we know he was alive by 10 p.m. And it's like, do we know that? Or are we just, assuming that because Katie's telling us that? Like, it just is too much. It's too much because it's like she's trying to sell it that he was alive at that point.
About 9 o'clock, told him to go to bed. And he said, come out of his room where he was playing. He said, all right, good night, Mama. Good night, puppies. Love you. He went to bed. He was doing something in his room because about an hour later I heard some noise and I was like, I don't care what you're doing in there, but go to sleep. And about midnight I got up and I went to bed. And 6 o'clock I went to wake him up for school Monday morning. And that's when he went here.
Earlier you had stated you heard a noise in his room before you went to bed. What time was that?
Around 10 o'clock.
10 p.m. What did it sound like?
Just a thud.
A thud. You stated that you said, look, I don't care what you're doing in there, go to bed. Is that right?
I was on the couch, which is near his room, and I said, Bubba, did you fall out of the bed? And he said, no, ma'am. And I said, well, whatever you're doing in there, knock it off and go to sleep.
So you heard his voice at 10 p.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any idea what the sound actually was?
I do not, no.
Yeah, and she doesn't, when she's, okay, here's the other thing that I was saying last night too, and I hope maybe we can kind of see that in the small clips here. When Katie is in interviews, she kind of is like different with each interviewer. Like she's very somber and like short answered with Nancy. But when she was on Chronicles of Olivia, she's very much like more animated and she's just different. And I hope that, I don't know if you can kind of see that in these two clips, but she doesn't mention how she got off the phone with her husband to Olivia, or in Chronicles of Olivia. I don't know. It's just, the story changes and I don't like that. I think you guys kind of understand that as well. Hold on.
About 9 o'clock, told him to go to bed. And he said, come out of his room where he was playing. He said, all right, good night, Mama. Good night, puppies. Love you. He went to bed. He was doing something in his room because about an hour later I heard some noise and I was like, I don't care what you're doing in there, but go to sleep. And about midnight I got up and I went to bed. And 6 o'clock I went to wake him up for school Monday morning. And that's when he went here.
Earlier you had stated you heard a noise in his room before you went to bed. What time was that?
Around 10 o'clock.
10 p.m. What did it sound like?
Just a thud.
A thud. You stated that you said, look, I don't care what you're doing in there, go to bed. Is that right?
I was on the couch, which is near his room, and I said, Bubba, did you fall out of the bed? And he said, no, ma'am. And I said, well, whatever you're doing in there, knock it off and go to sleep.
So you heard his voice at 10 p.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any idea what the sound actually was?
I do not, no.
All right. So we can play a little bit of the court TV stuff that aired last night. Yeah, driving a different narrative. I noticed somebody said sometimes she sure has a Southern accent. Yeah. And then other times she doesn't. Like it's not as thick. I don't know. That to me is strange too. Other people have noticed that too. And why, oh, why wouldn't she check on him? Exactly. And how convenient. The night that there's a thud that she doesn't check on him with, he goes missing. Yeah, she doesn't blink much, but you know who does blink a lot at times? Chris. Her talk is so fake. I bet she never talked like that when she was signed up. I'm wondering too, like, about people who were in the military with her, like, what they have to say about her. Right. And why would she assume he falls out of bed at 15 years old? Like a 3-year-old, maybe I would think that. I don't know. All right, so I hope you guys like the clips I put together. Let me just share my screen. I don't want to play this whole thing, like I said, but there were some good stuff. So Pascal's on there, good stuff, but I want to get to like the experts and stuff. So I'm just going to skip past that. We probably won't watch all of this either. But again, yeah, I saw somebody earlier say something about 600 watching and only 117 likes. Like, hit that like. Let's get his story out there, guys, please.
Chad Daybell on trial.
Knew my son was missing, and I just started watching body language, listening to words coming out. Did I form an opinion? Yeah, I formed an opinion. I am only human. Then again, once again, my son, something has happened to my son under her watch. And once again, she wasn't being an adult. She wasn't being a parent taking care of an autistic child.
That there are problems. It's obvious that there are problems here between Seth and Katie. That's why they got divorced. Now, they have a child together, a child with autism, and trying to understand these dynamics and how that could impact what happened to Sebastian, why he would suddenly vanish for whatever reason that it could impact. We dove into the divorce documents.
That's a good theory. Johnny said, ladies, is it possible someone kidnapped for the kid for the father? Maybe took him out the window, maybe holding him till it's clear. Maybe. Again, everything is on the table. It really is. And I had asked a moderator, I wasn't sure if you guys know the answer, let me know. Did Seth take his polygraph? Again, I don't put too much weight in polygraphs. Even if they say Katie passed it, I don't put much weight into that. Because again, law enforcement can just lie to you and say, yes, you passed, all while they're building a case or figuring out what's going on. But yeah, I was curious if he did. Yeah, that is true, Jazz. And that's something that I was kind of thinking as well, is like, he's kind of been through hell. People are sending him cash apps and stuff so that he can get by. Okay, Seth's was today. So he might not put himself through this type of stress. For the sake of custody, especially if they were discussing custody. I don't know. But again, everything's on the table until he's found or we know what's going on.
Between Katie and Seth, because sometimes you go in there, you can pull out information that may very well shed some more light on this case and Sebastian himself. Take a look on the screen here. In those divorce documents, our son suffers from a rare condition called 6q27 chromosomal deletion syndrome. Among the symptoms he suffers from are incidents of acting out, where he hits and bites himself out of frustration. He's been known to throw himself to the ground during these incidents. So what exactly is this 6q27? How could that impact a child? How could that impact a teenager who's 15 years old? We're going to dig into that right now. Still with me, podcaster Pascal Boboff, and also joining us tonight in Los Angeles, California, clinical and forensic neuropsychologist, associate professor at Pepperdine University, and author of The New Rules of Attachment. Dr. Judy Ho is with us. Thank you so much, Dr. Judy Ho. Let me ask you this. 6q27, what is that? What does that mean? And how could that impact a child and then a 15-year-old teenager and someone who's been a child of a divorce?
Well, Benny, 6q27 deletion syndrome is a genetic condition. It's very rare, and it's caused by the deletion of a small piece of chromosome 6. So the deletion can vary in size. We don't know more details. And also what we know about this syndrome is that it's somewhat heterogeneous in presentation. So just depending on how much it's affecting the person, they could display a number of different behavioral difficulties. We saw on that court document that you just showed, Benny, some of the ones that are specific to Sebastian. But some of the more common ones are some developmental delays in some area of perhaps language or motor skills or even social skills. Sometimes these individuals have a mild intellectual disability and some cognitive issues. Oftentimes they have communication difficulties, social challenges, understanding feelings of another person and being able to interact back and forth. Sometimes they'll have difficulty with impulse control and managing their anger and more negative emotions. And there is some research that suggests there may be an increased risk of autism disorder. So they're not one-to-one, but there may be a slight risk amplified based on this particular deletion syndrome.
Now, also in these documents, they describe a specific incident. And again, this is from papers filed by Seth. On August 11th, 2016, I had told him that day that if he cleaned his room, he could go swimming. I asked him if his room was clean, and he replied that it wasn't. I told him he couldn't go swimming until it was clean. Sebastian reacted by flying into a rage, screaming and hitting himself, biting himself, and trying to throw himself on the floor. I reached out to catch him before his head hit the door frame. So Dr. Judy Ho, knowing this, knowing that he is a child with autism, you got to put that together. Now he's 15 years old, going through those changes as well. He's in the middle of a situation where his mother and father don't really get along and don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. What are your thoughts about how all of that could play a role in why this child has vanished?
Well, Vinny, during the teenage years, we know that our young people are going through a number of different transitions. They're trying to figure out who they are, their identity, their place in life. They're grappling with issues of self-esteem and what they're going to do in the future. So that's already a stressful time for everyone. But now we have these additional stressors, mom and dad possibly not getting along, trying to figure out, how to essentially exist in the middle as you're seeing potential co-parenting difficulties. Individuals, even if they're not communicating them directly, they're still feeling the pressure. They're still feeling the difficulties from these parental arguments. And so if we think of this time as a potentially very stressful time, an additionally stressful time for Sebastian, there could have been a number of other things that have come up. Maybe his emotion regulation difficulties were even getting more challenging in face of these stressors. And so I just think that there's so much more that we have to uncover because there's way more than meets the eye. I heard your conversation with Pascal earlier, and there's just a lot of things that are not really making sense and not adding up. And it just kind of feels like some of the information, as we mentioned before, there was a CPS call to the primary residence of the mother and the stepfather. Now, why was it that CPS call? Why was biological father Seth not notified of that until later, finding out on podcasts? There's something here that we don't know about, and we have so much more to find out.
Pascal, in your conversations with Sebastian's dad, Seth, did this?
He wouldn't. Before Sebastian disappeared, he didn't say much. He was fairly diplomatic about that, to be completely honest.
Now, Sebastian's father told Nancy Grace in an interview posted on YouTube this week that Sebastian had expressed on several occasions that he did not want to return to the home he shared with his mother and stepfather. Let's take a listen.
He's on multiple occasions sit there and has told me he doesn't want to go back. And I've asked him, why don't you want to go back? And he wouldn't tell me. He didn't say why. He was just like, I just don't want to go back. And it's, at that point in time, I'm just like, okay, well, maybe it's the freedom that he gets at my house.
Dr. Judy Ho, there's lots of reasons why a 15-year-old may want to stay with one parent over the other for whatever reason. But if that same child now disappears, I think this is something that becomes much more significant.
That's exactly right, Vinny. At some point or another, between these mixed households, child's going to show a preference over living in one household for another. A lot of the reasons are not nefarious. It's just something that they're going through. But like you said, putting all of the pieces together, the CPS call, the child disappearing, some potentially strange behaviors from mother and stepfather. Again, everybody grieves differently. Everybody deals with stress differently. But I think a lot of people are saying, well, why are you not staying close? Why are you not doing something more active in the search? Even if you are afraid of the social pressures around you, isn't the biggest priority to try to find your son and make sure that he's okay? I think it's just there's more and more things now that are adding up, Vinny, that's causing us to question exactly what was going on in this household right before he disappeared.
And Pascal, the other thing is happening, the more that, and you.
And that's interesting, Kelt, that you bring that up because you just reminded me of another red flag. So Kelt says, shoot, what if he was trying to get to his dad's? So a lot of people kind of wondered that too. Did he run away? I mean, although he's got no shoes on, all his shoes are accounted for, and the scent was not picked up outside the home of him. Somehow I started the theory of like maybe he got in an argument with the mom leaving Texas Roadhouse and stormed out of the car and started walking towards dad's house. However, then we find out Katie, when she decides to break the news to bio dad Seth that their son is missing, she doesn't call him and say, hey, is he there? Or please tell me he's there. First thing she says to Seth is, don't be mad. So wait, you don't know where your son is, but you're calling the father and assuming already that he's not there? Like, why is that the first thing that you say to the father on the phone? Don't be upset. Don't be mad. It should, if you have nothing to do with this, in my opinion, you should be calling the father and say, please tell me he's there. Instead, she's already like telling him, that she already knows somehow that he's not there. How would she have known that? He's missing. You have no idea where he is. You have nothing to do with the disappearance. So why aren't you calling the father saying, please tell me you have him? Or we have a huge problem then because he's not here and he's not there. Instead, she automatically knew that he wasn't there. It's just, okay, Tracy said Chris contacted Seth, but wasn't that how the conversation went? They didn't call Seth and say, is he there? They called and said, don't be upset. But hello, Jay, good to see you. You're fine. We're just going over odd statements and all that. Yeah, that's weird. I would be asking if he had heard from him. Right. And thank you, Amy Lou Who.
Said this off the top, right? The deeper you go into the interpersonal relationships and issues that the adults in Sebastian's life have, it just seems like there's much more potential for there to be a reason for him to disappear, whether he disappears voluntarily or whether something happened that made him disappear. It just seems that there's conflict and there are things happening in the lives of these three adults that somehow impacted this child, because he did not just vanish for no reason.
Absolutely. Obviously, as you can see, there's a lot going on. As you just said, there's a lot going on inside this family, this blended family, if you will. And there could be many possibilities of him running off because he couldn't stand bouncing back and forth like a tennis ball from one household to the other. There is a possibility of him liking staying with his father more than staying with the Proudfoots. That's a possibility as well. But I guess those are all questions that are still up in the air that I think we're all pleading for an answer on.
Yeah, it's the old news cliche, more questions than answers, but it continues. And all the questions really come down to one question, like, where is Sebastian? Pascal Beaubuff, not ruling it out. It seems.
Okay, so someone in chat said no shoes could possibly mean he was carried out of there. And you know what? We can't say that that's not true, right? I mean, it's a possibility that is still on the table for sure. I don't believe it was a stranger abduction like that, or he was lured away like that. I think a 15-year-old would be kicking and screaming and not really being carried. I guess it would depend on what kind of state you think he was in at the time. Was he drugged and all that? But from what, and I don't know if we can even believe it, but Chris and Katie claim that they have lights in the front of their house that would have picked up somebody walking or something like that in the front of the house. I don't know. But listen, it's all on the table. Exactly. How far can he go without shoes? Right. And I guess him even leaving the vehicle upset at his mom, it's kind of like, well, then why wouldn't he have had his shoes on?
They don't really have the leads, the evidence. They just concluded another search last Friday. So where are we in all this? I want to show you the map another time, because this is significant in all of this, in terms of whether or not there are clues, whether a scent was picked up, whether or not water searches are the key right now in this area, and how wide of a scope will you go? Chris Proudfoot was interviewed by Nancy Grace, and this is what he said. He said there have been dogs from all over the country that have come in and done searches and had scent hits in various locations. But I could say a certain percentage of them tend to go towards the same spot, which would have been a retention pond. At least 3 that I know for a fact that did hit on the retention pond. What does that mean? Joining us tonight from the United Cajun Navy, Kevin LaFond, and in Salt Lake City, Utah, private investigator Jason Jensen. Great to have you both back. Kevin, let me start with you. The hits going towards the pond, that retention pond was drained, right?
It was, yes.
So what does it tell you? What does it tell you?
It tells us that there's something that...
One more time, I didn't hear you.
Well, obviously there's something... I'm sorry. Obviously, there's something that was there at some point in time. The thing with dogs is they can pick up a scent up to a year after the fact. So the age of that scent is unknown. Also, the wind conditions, water conditions, what's in the soil, what's around at the time. These all play a factor in it. But if multiple dog teams are having a hit in the same location, it's pointing in a direction.
And Kevin, how much water is in that area that you would say are bodies of water that need to be searched in a case like this?
Well, obviously anything close to the home, but also larger bodies of water that are nearby. We in fact brought out one of our sonar boats with side scanning and direct down scanning sonar, as well as specialized night lighting rigs to actually look through the water at night in various water colors so they can see through it. So those places need to be searched in more detail, and that's something that we weren't able to get to that phase, searching the larger bodies of water.
All right, Jason Jensen, we've heard the official word from investigators. A lot of times they hold back some information, but the fact that they went searching, an additional search, and came back and said they didn't find anything tells me they don't really have the leads here if they're continuing these searches. So what, from your perspective, if he's barefoot, it's the middle of the night, like where is he going?
Right, you have to ask, what would draw a 15-year-old boy out of his home at 3 o'clock in the morning in a neighborhood that's pitch black? So, and with his situation, his disability, he had a past experience with fire ants that he would refuse to go outdoors barefooted. So if he actually left on his own volition, barefooted, what would compel him to do that? And with no genuine leads, they really got to keep all their options open, everything from foul play to an accident. So searching bodies of water where it could be an accidental drowning makes sense. But when they're draining retention ponds and finding nothing, that's clearly not the situation.
I want to show everyone that the surveillance video again. This is from Channel 5, Scripps News Nashville. Track this down, Nick Barris, reporter. Home security footage from somewhere in the neighborhood. I'm looking at this. Here's what the sheriff's deputy told Nick Barris about his reaction to this video, what it means.
No evidentiary value?
It is of no evidentiary value.
Can you tell me what those lights are?
No.
Why?
Because the investigation remains ongoing.
And so it could play a role down the road depending on developments?
We don't know what we don't know. So yes, it could play a role.
I'm trying to decipher what he just said, Jason. Could you decipher what the investigator told us or didn't tell us about that?
It sounds like they're trying to keep that information close to the vest, and they don't want to reveal that because it might be significant down the road.
Okay, so you think they know what it is? They're just not saying?
I think they do. I mean, I've seen surveillance footage so many times. Me looking at that, believing it could be night vision, is not necessarily a light. I've had a bug fly up to my camera and it looked like it was lit up. So if it is a flashlight and it appears to be a couple, at a distance apart from each other, that would, signal to me you got 2 people each walking with a flashlight.
Okay, question for chat and for replay viewers. Do you believe law enforcement knows what these lights are? I personally, I agree with Jason Jensen. I think they know they're keeping all that information close in case they need to use it for something down the line in the investigation. I also kind of go back to Secret Service aiding TBI and the local police in this investigation. And I wonder if maybe they lended their resources in with something to do with this surveillance. So I'm going to pull up everyone's responses while I play this.
So if one person's ahead of another and they're like searching or they're in tandem, that might mean something. Going from the home where there was 2 adults, or maybe there was someone that came in and, abducted, which seems very highly unlikely in most situations. But we know from cases like JonBenet Ramsey, abductions, alleged abductions can occur. So did someone go in the home? Because we know that mom said that she yelled over to Sebastian's room, hey, whatever's going on over there, stop it. Well, was that people in his room? We don't know. So if it was under an involuntary, exit, that would make sense why he would go barefooted.
And that thud, you're getting back to that thud. All right, Kevin LaFound, United Cajun Navy, where do you think the search should be headed today? Where should the focus be, and how far and wide should this search go?
Well, it's the larger bodies of water that really need to be searched at this point. There's been a lot of activity on the ground. There's been a lot of activity sweeping through, and the larger bodies of water with the specialized equipment that can detect down and out under the water really needs to be ruled out. Because until you rule it out, it's in play.
Absolutely. Kevin LaFawn, United Cajun Navy, private investigator Jason Jensen. Great to see you both. Thank you for helping us out.
All right, guys. I think that's going to conclude things. I'll just pull up a few comments in chat and then call it a night. I have a headache and I just want to lay down. So those lights may be LED or LED or halogen flashlights that professionals use in contracting work. So to the high lumen rating, forensics can tell by the pulses per minute. Interesting. Thank you for that tidbit. That would be something that, the federal resources from Secret Service could maybe help narrow down. Thank you, Roxanne. Yeah, that thud that she never went and checked on. Seems like most of you guys are saying, I didn't see anybody who said that they don't know what those lights are. Seems like everyone thinks that they know. But yeah, I appreciate you guys all being here. Again, we're going to go live Friday night. Tomorrow's my birthday, so I'm just going to take it easy and hang out. And then we will talk Friday night. We'll probably do a Watts live. So we did have a little Watts update. They are selling the house again. So the owners bought the house 2022. They painted the outside away from that ugly brown that Chris picked when they built the house. And now all of a sudden the owners are moving. So everyone's kind of been wondering on Watts Island today, like, why are they, moving? They just moved in. What's going on? So we'll just, kind of pull up the Zillow link, which is on my community tab, if anyone hasn't seen it. And then we'll just discuss some Watts stuff on Friday. Hopefully we can get some updates in Sebastian's case for the next time I go live on this case, because I really want, a conclusion. And yeah, we will talk very soon, guys. And yeah, thank you all for being here. And thank you everyone for the birthday wishes. Appreciate you guys. My only birthday request is you guys hit that like button on your way out, spread the information on this case. And let me just pull up my outro because it got taken down when I left the screen. Okay, bye guys.